Hello and welcome to today's educational webinar, The Global State of Manufacturing Operations Management Software, Weaving the Digital Thread. My name is Anna Wells and I'm an executive editor within ABM's manufacturing group. I will serve as your moderator for today's event, and I am very pleased to be joined by Matthew Littlefield, President and Principal Analyst of LNS Research. So today Matthew will present key findings from a multi-year benchmark study of over 500 global manufacturing executives on the current state of the manufacturing operations management software market, as well as outline how increased industry pressures and demands on global manufacturers and emerging trends like cloud, big data, IoT, and mobile capabilities have sparked renewed interest and momentum in the manufacturing operations management software space. Matthew co-founded LNS Research in 2011 and is now President and Principal Analyst. In this role, Matthew oversees LNS's coverage of the industrial value chain. Before founding LNS Research, Matthew led the Aberdeen Group's global manufacturing research practice, where he authored hundreds of thought leadership research reports and frequently spoke at industry-leading events. So before we hear from Matthew, I'd like to quickly go over just a few housekeeping items for today's event. First of all, this webinar is being recorded and archived, and you'll be sent a follow-up email in order to view this on demand after the presentation is concluded. Also, the slides are available as a PDF download under the Resources tab, along with a corresponding ebook, Top Strategies for Global MES MOM Selection and Implementation. So look for those if you're interested. In addition, we'll leave some room at the end for audience questions. So if you'd like to ask Matthew a question, you can submit it at any point throughout the presentation via the Ask a Question box, and we will get to as many questions as we can later on in the presentation. And even if we're running out of time, you can still post questions. I think Matthew is planning on following up individually after the fact if we run out of time. So, don't hold back at that point. Finally, a special thank you to LNS Research for presenting this event and to our sponsor companies, which include Epicor, Northwest Analytics, L&T Infotech, and Aegis Software. So without further ado, I'm going to hand things off to Matthew Littlefield for the presentation. Matt?
Thanks, Anna. Well, first I'd like to say I'm really excited to be here today. As you mentioned, this is a multi-year manufacturing operations management research study, and there's a number of findings that we're presenting for the first time. So really excited about sharing this research with the broader market and all of our attendees here today. And as you mentioned, I'd also like to give a special thanks to both ABM Media as well as our sponsors, Aegis Software, Northwest Analytics, L&T Infotech, and Epicor. These companies really all share our vision for the digital thread and moving forward the manufacturing operations management software market. So in today's presentation, I want to really cover several things. Let's see. First, I want to share a little bit about who LNS Research is. Then I want to go through and share some of our survey demographics. I want to talk about kind of how we conduct our research and how this data can be used in your organization so you understand really how to drive decisions from this information. I want to talk about some of the manufacturing objectives and challenges that we're seeing in the marketplace based on the survey data. Then I want to explore this idea of the digital thread, what it is, how companies are using it to transform their businesses and digitize their businesses. We'll talk about quality and traceability and some of the emerging technologies there. And then we'll get into the meat of the manufacturing operations management analysis from the data. So what do the traditional systems look like that have existed in the space? What are next generation systems going to look like in the future? And then we'll share some benchmark information on how new approaches to manufacturing operations management software are driving performance benefits. And then we will end with some actionable recommendations. And I think I'm having a little bit of trouble with the slides advancing. Is anyone else seeing the slides go forward? I'm hitting the next button, but I'm not seeing the slides go forward.
I can see them go forward. It looks like you're on slide 6.
Okay, I'm just not seeing them go forward. All right, let's see here. Maybe Anna, you can take control.
Yeah, sure. Where
And
do you want to be? Slide 2?
Slide 3 would be
Slide
3 would be great.
Can you see that now?
Nope, but I'll just go ahead.
Okay, sounds good.
Sure. So, LS Research, we are a research and advisory firm that helps clients innovate and achieve operational excellence. Our firm really is focused on manufacturing executives and helping them understand where the market's moving and how to be at the front of these trends. So we do that with our experienced analyst team. We also conduct a number of primary research studies each year to be on the front lines of what the new trends are. And we have deep industry contacts as well on the qualitative side through our executive councils. And then, of course, we want to make this as intuitive and visual as possible. So we spend a lot of time bringing the data to life with innovative visualizations. On the next slide, you see our research model. These are the strategic objectives, is really where we start. Strategic objectives are an important part of understanding what companies are trying to do today, how they're trying to move their businesses forward, whether it's grow revenue, cut costs, innovate, drive new products. Then we try and understand what are the metrics that companies are measuring to understand their success and benchmark themselves to other companies. So we spend a lot of time understanding those metrics and sharing the distribution of those metrics so you can understand if you're a top performer or a laggard. And then we really want companies to understand how to build a model of operational excellence. So for us, this means bringing together the right capabilities of business process, leadership, and supporting technologies. And of course, using continuous improvement tools to make sure those processes, leadership skills, and technology approaches are constantly improving. On the next slide, you see some of our research's council members. So this is how we really bring to life the data. We have quarterly meetings where all of these executives from all these companies have discussions on a number of quality and manufacturing topics, and we also conduct a number of case studies based on what's going on with all of these companies. And then on the next slide, you see the research demographics. So as Anna mentioned earlier, today's research is based on over 500 completed surveys from executives across quality and manufacturing. You can see it's pretty well split. So we have a number of discrete manufacturers, which is our largest percentage, and then a pretty even split across food and beverage and CPG, life sciences, and process manufacturing. And of course, this is a global study. It was an online English-based survey, but you can see we had participants from a number of different regions, North America, Europe, Asia, and rest of the world. And then in terms of the different company sizes, you see small was the largest, so for us small is greater than or less than 250 million in revenue. Large is greater than $1 billion, and then the mid-size is in that sweet spot from 250 million to $1 billion. So there's a broad and deep set of companies that participated. On the website, we've done some different cuts, and there's the ability to slice and dice the data by specific industry or region or company size. For today, most of our analysis is across the broad data set. So manufacturing objectives and challenges. On the next slide there, you can really see some of the challenges that we're facing today. There's two main challenges that really bubbled to the top that I think are driving companies today. Let's see. I just got to retry. So the top objectives, there we go, are quality and customer focused for sure. So companies today are really trying to ensure product quality. We see this as one of the major drivers behind the adoption of manufacturing operations management software, and you'll see it's a highly mature area of operations later on. And the second is aligning to the customer demand and making sure that within operations that we can meet both the forecast as well as robust changes in demand. So really see companies driving down inventory, increasing agility and responsiveness. And again, we believe that connecting the digital thread across can help support this. So these are where we're seeing the top issues: quality and customer demand. There are, of course, other issues as well, and a lot of that is around capacity. So we do see companies continuing to invest in new factories, new production capabilities. We're actually just doing a case study for an automotive supplier yesterday, and they're in the process of opening a new facility. We're certainly seeing new facilities across the U.S., all of North America, as well as Asia. The growth just continues for production capability growth. And then, of course, we hear much about innovation as well and driving new products to market. So it's a challenging market out there. There's a lot of goals, but we do see the customer being the top focus for most manufacturers today. So it looks like I can switch my own slides now. Thanks, Anna. So the top manufacturing challenges, this is where we're seeing companies struggling when they want to achieve these goals. And a lot of the challenges, broadly speaking, are around issues of silos. So companies today really do struggle with collaboration across different departments. We spend a lot of time talking to companies on our follow-up interviews around how operations may not talk or work effectively with supply chain planning, may not work effectively with engineering and driving new designs to production, may not work effectively with quality, where quality is more of a compliance function rather than a business partner. So all these different organizations really do need to come together, and often that point of collaboration should be the facility, the production plant, the shop floor. That's where all these different capabilities do need to come together. So that collaboration is a big challenge for companies. The next, again, has to do with the silos, and that's disparate systems and data sources. In manufacturing today, we really do live in a world of legacy. There's not that many greenfield plants out there, and those that are hopefully don't have these disparate system issues. But hopefully we're moving ahead with those issues. The final one that we see quite often is ROI justification for improved investments. Even though companies have these legacy systems, they are challenged to invest into new systems. This has a lot of reasons, I think some of which have to do with previous challenges with previous architectures, previous systems may not have been as successful as companies had hoped for. And also companies lack maybe some insight into how best to move ahead with some of these systems. So these, I think, characterize the challenges that a lot of companies face well. It's really difficult to address these challenges of silos, both in systems and people. And we really think the concept of operational excellence and weaving the digital thread across manufacturing can help address these challenges. I just want to verify that the slides are moving ahead, Anna.
Yep, everything looks good.
All right, thanks. So one of the big trends that we see in the marketplace today is towards digitization. In the U.S., we have the Smart Manufacturing Leadership Coalition, really is a combination of academics, the government, and industry. In Germany, we have Industry 4.0, which is perhaps even a little bit more well-known than the smart manufacturing issues here in the U.S., really, again, being pushed by the academics, the government, as well as industry. And the concept here behind Industry 4.0 or smart manufacturing is really that we have moved now to the fourth industrial revolution, as it's called. Whereas in previous revolutions, it was about control and automation, but now it's really about information and intelligence. In the future, we expect to see pervasive sensing, so an increase of sensor networks, an increase in intelligent both tooling, equipment, and machines within production facilities. And with this will come the need for increased connectivity, increased integration, and really enable new business models and new approaches to manufacturing, and really connecting manufacturing to the broader supply chain. This is really just starting today. These initiatives have been out for the last 2 or 3 years, maybe starting in 2011, 2010 was the first time we really started hearing about these. When we talk to large manufacturing organizations, when they believe this will be really implemented across their businesses, it's starting today, and it will extend out across 2020 and 2030. Those are some of the years that we're seeing. So companies really are in the preparing stages for leveraging some of these new technologies, new approaches within their facilities. Certainly some of the greenfield plants that we talked about, as companies are increasing production capacity, certainly are leveraging some of these technologies. And we'll see over time an increase in bringing up to speed legacy systems with some of these new models. So certainly is a transition time within manufacturing. There's a lot of push from government and from industry to move manufacturers in this direction, and we are starting to see the pickup. So what are some of the trends that we're seeing in digitization and smart manufacturing? One of the first places that we expect to see manufacturers using some of these Internet of Things enabled or big data enabled technologies is around predictive and preventive analytics. So using data approaches to understand when assets may fail is a great use case, and getting ahead of the break-fix mentality and really getting to that preventive mentality. Another area is on scheduling, and one of the areas that has traditionally plagued planning and scheduling applications is a lack of connection to reality. So the models that may have been built when that scheduling application was first implemented have changed, the plant layout has changed, the materials have changed, the suppliers have changed. Now no one trusts that planning or scheduling tool. In today's day and age, as we have these new digital tools, the connection to reality is much more in sync. And those tools are maintainable and really can become decision support tools. So again, better scheduling and better forecasting is another great use case that we see these big data applications coming from. Of course, there are some challenges in interoperability. Companies that are investing today in machine integration, data historian integration up into manufacturing operations certainly will have a big advantage, and we see a lot of companies investing in this space right now, and will be over the next 3 to 5 years. Of course, when you look at the market, and this is one of the questions we asked in the survey, what is the potential of some of these new Internet of Things technologies like mobility, big data, or cloud? A lot of companies still are unsure, but 40% of survey respondents said we're unsure what the potential is. But at the same time, 21% have already started to make those initial investments. So we really now have moved beyond just that early adopter phase. We're at about 20% of the market that's making active investments in some of these emerging technologies. So we see just a long, long runway for companies moving in this direction. So what are some of the changing business conditions that are driving companies in this move towards digitization? The concept of digitization really is going all the way from engineering and having that 3D digital design of the product through to production planning and manufacturing planning, onto the shop floor, through to the customer, and eliminating the paper-based systems, those handoffs, those manual manipulations that rob us of agility, rob us of our ability to quickly react to changes in the marketplace and make that a seamless integration across the value chain. So some of the things that are driving us to move that direction is around volatility, as well as an increased number of product variations. Those are the ones that really bubble to the top. So if companies today have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of possible combinations of products, especially as they move to more customer-based configuration of their products. Think automotive, for example. Just many, many combinations of each model. So that introduces incredible complexity into the manufacturing process, but it's not just that manufacturing process. It's now, as we try and go back and create the as-built record and have traceability throughout the value chain, it's very, very challenging to do that without integrated digital systems. Likewise, capturing all the different process capabilities throughout manufacturing, so the detailed inventory data, the detailed maintenance data, all the production execution data around whatever it happens to be. It could be visual inspection, it could be torque, it could be any type of inspection. Attaching that to the product record, again, very challenging without connected systems. So this here is an infographic representing what we see as that digital thread. It's a connection across the value chain using different types of devices to go all the way from a customer order through engineering to the supply chain planning, understanding the quality and inspection of materials, managing the production process, the outgoing quality, and then finally delivering that asset and servicing that asset, and making sure that the process is connected through each of these stages. And the reason that we think the manufacturing operations management software space is such an important piece of this story is that it's an underinvested portion. If you look at supply chain applications and ERP applications, there's broad adoption of those across the industry. Same for PLM and the engineering tools, where often there's a breakdown. It's in the quality and manufacturing areas, where it's still a lot of paper-based systems. It's still a lot of disparate systems that may have been homegrown over time. So that's really, for a lot of companies, where this chain breaks down is once you get into the plant, which just creates lots and lots of challenges as you try and really implement some of the strategies that we've talked about. And what are some of the things that you can do once you have this digital thread in place? One of the big ones, one of the big use cases we see is closed loop processes. So this is the idea of really being able to push from engineering, from design, your work instructions, your quality instructions, through to suppliers as well as manufacturing, then push that supplier manufacturing data to the field as needed, and then bringing that data back again, especially as the products that we're manufacturing are becoming smarter. So this can then allow us to take the field failure, the voice of customer data, and deliver it back through manufacturing and supplying to then essentially both capture our product records as well as improve over time, improve our designs, so implement programs like design for quality or design for manufacturability. These programs only work when there is this closed loop process in place. And we believe that the concept of digital thread is central to enabling closed loop processes. So what are the roles of some emerging technologies in this scenario? One area that we started looking at was cloud. Cloud has certainly been an interesting topic in the enterprise software space in general, as well as in the consumer space in general. So at this point, I think most folks are very familiar with what the cloud is, how it impacts their day-to-day life, and they may even be implementing in some parts of their other enterprise application space. So your CRM system or ERP system very well may be in the cloud today. What's been more challenging for companies is to understand where the cloud plays in the production environment. When there is tight machine-level integration and high-speed manufacturing, and you can't afford downtime on the line, where and how to use the cloud today. And we see certainly most companies today still embrace on-premise, but we do see that there is kind of this focus on on-premise for sure. But more and more companies are looking at the cloud and how they can move that ahead in the future. And there's certainly some differences and challenges in where they may use the cloud. We don't think it's going to start within production execution or interlocking high-speed processes in manufacturing. It will most likely be around the analytics, around the big data, around delivering information through mobile devices to decision makers, so more at that supervisory and analytical layer, the dashboarding. And slower speed processes, there may be some production execution happening. And then over time, slowly as it makes sense, you'll see more and more of this hybrid approach where some of the processes may be managed on-premise and some may be managed in the cloud. So those are adoption numbers on where folks are planning to adopt the cloud or have already adopted the cloud of manufacturing. And this is where most folks see the benefits. Most of the benefits today are not necessarily business benefits. That case has not been made effectively yet in manufacturing, according to this data. It's more about IT. So we hear a lot about shadow IT organizations or hidden IT budgets within manufacturing, and also the convergence of manufacturing IT and business IT and corporate IT. Those worlds are coming together. So as the plant has less and less IT resources, there is I think, belief that the cloud can benefit the plant in freeing up the need for resources, but still delivering the IT resources and still delivering the solutions that they're looking for. Mobile is an area within manufacturing operations that's probably a little bit more mature and a little bit farther ahead on the curve of deployment than cloud is. It certainly allows companies to start moving towards a personalized user interface and even beyond just a role-based system. So where am I within the plant? How have I used the system before? What views may I want to see based on my current situation, the situational awareness? That's what we see being enabled by the use of mobile devices and intelligent systems. Certainly we're getting the use of more and more mobile devices within the plant, and then it can support that common user experience across all of your applications. And this here is just some analysis on where companies today believe mobile devices will impact their manufacturing operations. Certainly we see the most focus on the operational management layer within the plant, so your supervisors, manufacturing managers, plant managers. Maintenance, obviously maintenance personnel are mobile. They have their maintenance rounds. They have the unplanned downtimes that they have to go address. They need information when they do that. So they are more of the mobile worker within the plant, so there's certainly some interest there. Executives come in next. Certainly they are traveling, may not even be attached to a particular plant, but they may want to be able to see how the plant's performing from wherever they are. So we have and see some focus there. And then we move down to some of the technical or quality roles and plant operators, where maybe they're not as mobile, but I think there'll be new modes of operation as mobile devices and mobile technology really embraced by operators, and they may not be as non-mobile as we think in the future. And then finally, big data. I think the area that's probably most fruitful right now in terms of emerging technologies for manufacturing. We see companies really, this is where they see, I think, the most business benefit from emerging technologies. First and foremost, they see better forecasts and better analytical capabilities within their KPIs, or where companies see the most benefit from, potential benefit from big data. There's also kind of that real-time aspect to it, and being able to correlate manufacturing business performance. So overall, we see companies very excited about big data, and manufacturers in general today have the data already. They have the data in data historians. They have the data in the equipment. They have the data in the ERP or PLM systems. What they don't have necessarily is a robust manufacturing data model to help them analyze that data and pull out intelligence from that data. So I think that's where the focus will be over the coming years, is really having common models to bring that data together from a manufacturing context, and then pull out intelligence from that data. So this is where a lot of the effort, I think, is going in to manufacturing today, really around big data and analytics. And then the final emerging technology that I wanted to talk about today was the Internet of Things. So IoT is certainly a very broad term, so I'm going to use the Internet of Everything. We hear the Industrial Internet. There's a lot of terms out there talking about IoT. And IoT in general really brings about the potential for devices to become self-aware and intelligent, and able to communicate machine to machine and create new business models. And we've given some examples here of how manufacturing connects into that Internet of Things. So you have the kind of traditional value chain there. At the top you have kind of the suppliers to manufacturers. So these are material and component suppliers. They're also the subassembly and equipment providers. So these companies are making smarter and smarter assets, as well as providing intelligence around the products that they're producing. They're delivering those to the solution providers or the manufacturers, who are in turn making smarter products that may incorporate IoT-based technology, and then pushing that through the distribution channels, which again will be tracking and tracing, putting sensors throughout the supply chain to those final end consumers, who again will have cloud-based, IoT-based software probably connected to a lot of those products. So really there is going to be a network of public and private internets and interconnected across all these different use cases. So it's going to be a connected world for sure. We're going to see, I think, a lot of increasing focus on security in this environment, about network infrastructure in this environment, as well as the different layers of software needed to support. So hopefully that sets the stage well for kind of what's going on in the manufacturing industry today, in terms of the top objectives that the manufacturing companies have, as well as how some of these emerging technology trends are impacting manufacturing. The next several sections here, I really want to dive into the manufacturing operations management software space, where we were and where we're currently are undergoing. So this is our infographic for the traditional approach to manufacturing operations management software. And there are some very specific challenges here. One, you see generally there are many disparate systems here within manufacturing, with separate databases, separate data structures, which creates complex integration within the shop floor. So maybe you have a quality application, a maintenance application, a inventory application, all having to be integrated with each other. And then there are separate interfaces down to the machine layer, as well as up to the business layer. And maybe there's separate kind of visualization tools trying to extract data from all these areas and put together the right visualizations. and some of these applications may be homegrown, and some of these applications may be kind of legacy off-the-shelf applications. So this, as we saw, can have lots of IT maintenance issues, is not very flexible, and puts manufacturing at a disadvantage when you think of it in the context of the digital thread, where it can't participate, can't play nicely within that environment. Where we see companies moving to is a platform approach to manufacturing operations management software, where rather than having many disparate and legacy applications, companies take more of a common platform approach, where there is a common data model across manufacturing, and across that common data model, there are services that make it easier to do integration, make it easier to do visualization and mobility, make it easier to do workflow. And then there are different applications on top of this common set of platform services. Of course, we live in a legacy world, so manufacturers today are not just ripping and replacing everything they have on the floor with an entirely new large platform, but it's more of a as we progress, as we make changes, let's use this new approach. Perhaps it's a process-by-process approach or a plant-by-plant approach slowly over time. Generally not a big bang approach. It could take 3, 5, 7 years to really roll this out across a global manufacturing network, but we do see companies starting to take this approach. And it simplifies the architecture, and it simplifies the integration, and it really allows the shop floor to be a participant in the digitization of the business. And as companies move to a platform approach and want to leverage some of these emerging technologies, one of the areas where we really see companies investing, and this is a great example of one of those applications at the top of a manufacturing operations platform, part of the manufacturing operations management space is enterprise manufacturing intelligence, where there's really this collection of data across both the manufacturing process, supply chain process, and other processes to provide the analytics and dashboarding that those roles that we talked about earlier, the management executives and operators, need to make better decisions, and also drive through and push forward our continuous improvement projects. So this is an area where we see companies probably looking to invest early on in the cycle of a move towards the digital thread. So now let's get into some of the survey data around manufacturing operations management software. So as we said, it's a relatively underinvested in area of enterprise applications. So based on our survey, currently there's about 24% of manufacturers that have a comprehensive manufacturing operations management software approach. But we see a lot of folks as well in the planning stages right now. So about 21% of the market is in the planning stage right now. And there's a lot of potential, I think, in the market to quickly expand in this direction. And we'll see there's a lot of benefit to taking this approach. When we look at the companies that have those 24% of the 500 plus that have taken this comprehensive software approach, we do see that it elevates the situation. It allows companies to think either at the corporate or business unit level about that application. About 68%, so just over 2/3 of companies, see manufacturing operations management at the corporate or business unit level, rather than 28.5% at the plant or line level. So companies really do see this space, this manufacturing operations management space, being more of it as an enterprise solution is less of a plant solution, which I think is a benefit to the overall space and allows manufacturing operations to participate within that digital thread. So how are companies today selecting and driving ROI with MOM software? So one of the questions we asked in the survey is, what are the top selectors for selecting your manufacturing operations management software? And the top two, not surprisingly, were around functionality and cost, with number 3 coming at ease of integration and number 4 coming at ease of use. So this is not too surprising, I don't think. Companies really want the solutions to be able to do what they want to be able to do on the shop floor. So we've been seeing and have been tracking the vendor space for a while now, and we're seeing an expansion of capabilities here. Some companies use the ISA 95 functional model across inventory, quality, production, and maintenance to drive their functionality. Others take their own approach based on what they believe their best practices are, what the needs of their customers are. But overall, we're seeing an expansion of the functionality that's being delivered by these by the solution providers. Of course, cost is always a factor, a major part of the ROI calculation, which is so important to so many different companies. So certainly we're seeing that as a top criteria. And then number 3 is this ease of integration with existing applications. So manufacturing does not exist in a vacuum. Companies don't want it to exist in a vacuum. We see, probably most importantly, the PLM and ERP integrations as those that companies are focusing on the most. And we think that's only an increasing trend. And then finally, ease of use. A lot of this has been driven by the consumer market, the Apple effect. Companies, users expect a lot more out of their software today than they did even 5 years ago. They expect it to work out of the box easily and intuitively with minimal training. So I think that is, again, one of the ones that really does drive decision making. We see below there, which I think companies sometimes think are the most important choices, and these I think more come at the end, maybe if you're choosing between 2 or 3 of the final choices. The references, time to implement, build it at scale. We cut it off here at top 7, but below that was even delivery model, which is cloud or on-premise or hosted. So there's a lot of difference between those, I'd say, less important criteria and these top 4, which really are the ones driving decision making today. We also asked companies, what are the areas of manufacturing operations management software that are most mature in your organization, as well as delivering the most value? And not surprisingly, I don't think that the ones that came to the top, bubbled to the top, were production execution, as well as quality. So these really tie most closely to those challenges we talked about earlier about delivering on product quality and being able to deliver to customer demand. This is where the majority of companies are spending their time, energy, and effort, and I think that will continue. And coming in, number 3 there is on the kind of data collection and reporting, real-time performance, and visibility, and that's where we're seeing companies getting value as well, kind of that enterprise manufacturing intelligence side. And then as it flows down below that, there's probably not really as much of a cohesive story. And so I think at that point it becomes more particular to a specific company what the pain points are. So I think the broad trends today are around production execution, quality, and manufacturing intelligence. That's where companies are most mature, and that's where companies are getting the most value. Although we always want to stress that it's not just because of technology that companies see success. It really does depend on the support of leadership and process capabilities. So in this case, we saw in the survey, about 85% of companies having some type of operational excellence program in place. It could have been ISO 9000, Lean, Six Sigma, or actually calling it an operational excellence program. A lot of companies have multiple programs even, but broadly in manufacturing there's a large adoption of these programs, and they're important to the success of the organization. And we can see that there are some big improvements based on the use of technology and the support of these processes. So we see that the three metrics that we looked at and showed here around unit cost, profit margin, and on-time shipments, companies who are using technology did see much larger improvements year over year in these metrics than non-users. So we are seeing that improvement year over year with the association of manufacturing operations management software. One other trend that we looked at was, how customized our systems versus, how out of the box are we going with using configurable workflows to deliver the capabilities that are desired and needed. Currently we're seeing a good number of companies are doing pretty well. About a quarter, about 80% or more out of the box. Only about 7% are truly out of the box. And then 60% is the largest in terms of out of the box at 29%, which is a lot of, I'd say, still customized type applications. And then you still see, almost 40% of the market at 40% out of the box or below, which is you're doing the majority of the work as customized at that point. We see the happiest customers, the happiest users of software, of manufacturing operations management software, being in that probably 80% range. It's only a quarter of the market today. I think that will continue to grow as both the vendors move the products ahead and continue to invest, and I think as the manufacturers themselves continue to understand the value of using configurable processes rather than customized, difficult to maintain code. Some of the other things we looked at was how long is it actually taking to implement the manufacturing operations management software, and I think this will give everyone on the line a good idea of kind of how they fall, how they compare to other companies. In general, that less than 6 months is pretty low, only about 12% of the market, and same with greater than 2 years. The majority of the market kind of sits in that 6 to 24 month time frame to get the first site up and live. I think, generally speaking, depending on complexity, that 6 to 12 months is a pretty good target. If you can do better than that, you're doing pretty well. If it's taking longer than that, perhaps biting off a little less might be beneficial. I think a really important thing to look at is the improvement from the first site to subsequent sites. So hopefully a lot of the pain is figured out in that first site, and you can use the first site to speed future implementations. So you can see there the less than 6 months certainly increases. The 6 to 12 months certainly increases. So that gets you to almost 2/3 of the marketplace. And I think that's a good place to be. For subsequent sites, you want to be in that less than 6 to 12 months or less than a year implementation. So you don't want to be having, I would say, long implementation times as you're moving down the sites, because you never get there, especially if you're a large organization. You want to be able to get kind of across the organization, across if you have 50 sites or 75 sites, 100 sites, whatever it is, maybe you can do 5 to 10 a year. If it's taking 2 years per site, you're just not going to get to the end. So speed is an important part of ROI, and it's also an important part of kind of getting across the plant network. So I think very closely tied to time to implementation is time to ROI. Obviously, manufacturing operations management, especially when you're talking about some of the execution capabilities, is mission critical, sub-second response time type application where if it goes down, production goes down. ROI is an important part of that situation and scenario. How long is it taking companies to see that ROI? The most common is 1 to 2 years. About a third of the marketplace is in that 1 to 2 year time frame for ROI. We do see a good portion of the market kind of in that less than a year. So you see less than 3 months, 3 to 6 months to a year. That's kind of turns into a majority there if you look at the less than a year. And then you see about 20% going more than 3 years. So there is pretty good differentiation across companies in terms of how long it takes to get an ROI. I think less than a year is a good target. And we see companies are pretty good at estimating that. You see about 39% are on that less than a year point as well. So, and then 26% are in the 12 to 18 months, with another 17% 18 to 24 months. So the good thing is companies don't have unrealistic expectations in terms of what they think their ROI time requirements are going to be. In fact, might be doing a little bit better in actual ROI, which I think is good for the industry. If you're realistic about your time to value in that kind of less than a year, maybe around 12 months, you're pretty likely to hit it based on these results. So how can we turn that information into some actionable recommendations? I think for your organization, it's really important to evaluate the most pressing pain points and then target your MOM implementations at those pain points. So maybe it's at customer demand, maybe it's at quality, maybe it's at visibility of what's happening on the shop floor. Make sure that's your focus area. Executive buy-in and cross-functional support we think is very important. We see collaboration across groups and disparate systems as a major challenge in the industry, and really one of the only ways to address that is to have the executive team bringing manufacturing in as part of the discussion, saying it's a differentiator, and giving manufacturing a seat at the table. We believe technology is only going to be an increasing important differentiator of a successful manufacturing organization, especially as many of these new and emerging technologies, which are really already present in our day-to-day lives as consumers, make their way into the industrial value chain. Companies need to be aware of these technologies, aware of the use cases of them around smart products as well as smart manufacturing, and think about that concept of a digital business, a digital value chain, and how if your plant isn't equipped to participate in that, the disadvantages that you'll be at. And kind of once your organization has gotten over that hump and believes in the concept of the digital thread of the digital business, we believe a comprehensive approach to manufacturing operations management is the best approach. We think companies should be shooting for 80% configurability or more out of the box. You want to have realistic ROI, but a measurable ROI. Companies certainly are achieving that in a year time frame, year and a half time frame. You want to be mindful of speed of implementation, make sure that you're not getting too bogged down in the implementation, that you're going and executing at a speed where you really can move across the overall plant network in a reasonable amount of time, 3 to 5 years perhaps. So these are all important parts, I think, of a overall successful use of technology and MOM software in the market today. So I hope that presentation got some folks on the line thinking about emerging technology within manufacturing in a new way. I also hope it gave some insights into where the market is today in terms of adoption of MOM software, some of the characteristics of what the current implementations look like, where folks are getting business value. And I'm very excited to answer some of the audience's questions.
Thank you so much, Matt. I thought that was great. A lot of great insights into what the manufacturing industry is up to. We got a lot of questions that came in during your presentation, so I think you're going to have some homework. We have a couple minutes to address a few, and then anybody we don't reach, Matt has agreed, and his colleagues at LNS have agreed to follow up with you folks after the fact. So one question that I thought was interesting that came through, simply because we hear about this type of problem quite a bit in manufacturing, is this is from Deirdre in the audience. How do we influence others to get on board to use a platform that is very complex and can hold various types of information when employees and managers are doing their best to avoid using the tool?
I think this goes to that usability question that we talked about. It's a challenge. Usability is a huge challenge, and I mentioned briefly the Apple effect. I think over the next several years, and some vendors are even doing it now, they really are embracing the idea that you have to design user interfaces that are beautiful yet functional, and that actually make users want to use them. So I think that really is the answer to that question, that the bar has been raised by the consumer side of applications, and the industrial market has to catch up, and I think they will catch up. But it's going to kind of really, you have to think about the use case, you have to think about the form factor, the device, all those things. You have to think about those things ahead of time and make sure that they fit or are in line with the expectations of the folks. And in today's day and age, I believe folks will use those systems if they do address some of those usability issues.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay, this question is from Alberto. Can you give some examples of current applications of digitization, Matt?
Yeah, there's certainly some great examples out there that you can find in the public sphere. Procter & Gamble is one. You hear them talking about, right from the CEO down, of digitizing the business. They talk about their business process of molecule to shelf. So really having that digital model and digital systems all the way through, from kind of the lab bench in R&D right through to retail and the consumer experience. Another company that publicly talks about digitization is Lockheed Martin with the digital thread. There's a lot of interviews online of executives from Lockheed Martin talking about it. The digital thread as well, really going through the 3D design of the airplanes to manufacturing to service of those over the life cycle of the airplane. So those are two kind of large manufacturers, both do all their own, or a majority of their own manufacturing, that really are taking this digital thread strategy.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Before we have to wrap up here, I think we're getting a lot of questions from the audience about EMI, or Enterprise Manufacturing Intelligence, and kind of how this fits into the picture when it comes to the landscape of MOM software. Can you speak to that?
Sure. The labels are a difficult thing. Analysts don't make it any simpler, so I'll probably just confuse the situation anyways. But when we look at manufacturing operations management, it is a functional model of the manufacturing space, and we think when you talk about software, MOM software, it's a software that supports those business activity model. We think EMI is one of the applications that is part of the MOM software landscape. there is some pretty common definitions out there around what should be included within manufacturing or enterprise manufacturing intelligence. There is the data collection. There's often some integration that goes along with it. But the most important part is twofold. One, the reporting, so being able to present that information around KPIs. And then the second, in a real-time, role-based fashion. And then the second is analytics, so some type of statistical and data tools to help do the what-if analysis to support decision-making and to support continuous improvement. So we see EMI as a software category that is part of the broader M1 landscape.
Okay, great. Well, since we're reaching the top of the hour, I think we're going to have to wrap up with that. But just a reminder, once again, this presentation is going to be sent out to everyone who's registered within the next 24 hours. In the meantime, the slides are available for download as well as the free ebook, the corresponding ebook. So feel free to, under your resources tab, download those resources if you'd like. A big thank you to Matthew Littlefield for the great content today. I thought that was a really interesting presentation. You did a great job. And again, one more thank you to our sponsor companies, Epicor, Northwest Analytics, L&T Infotech, and Aegis Software, and of course LNS Research for presenting today. So thanks to the audience. I hope you have a great day, and thanks for attending.